drought that you've talked about?
Well, that was the perception in the first place when Kenya announced that refugees are going to be returned to their host country. But from the outcome of this meeting, it seems it was a blessing in disguise. Maybe the government did this smartly to draw the attention of the international community. You will note that 6 presidents from IGAD have been here, as well as members of the international community. And the commitment has not been to forcefully return these refugees. The outcome has been to give them more mobility, and create positive perception about them, create skills for them, and after that, work with the Somali government in improving improving security in Somalia.
Right. You seem, though, to be sort of saying that Kenya's approach was wrong in a way. Do you think it was not considered in terms of its deliberations? And we've seen it for a while, over maybe perhaps the last 2 or 3 years or so, insisting on the return of Somali refugees, even before the setting in of the drought. Do you think those ambitions or those hopes were ill-conceived at the time?
Maybe they were smart moves to create attention, international attention, to the situation and the plight of the Somali refugees in Kenya. And it's a very well-known fact that even the WFP is not providing the necessary ration, and there's malnutrition in camps. The international community had done a fatigue, and they are not paying the necessary attention to the refugee situation in Kenya. So by Kenya, creating that environment, it has created the international community to bring more focus to the issue. That's why now we're expecting the international community to be supporting the host countries as well as the host communities. And I can give you an example. Kenya now has got an opportunity to even get international support for constructing the road from Garissa to Liboi.
Right. So it was smart diplomacy, is what I hear you saying.
I would say like that.
All right, Mohammed, are those your views?
I think we had a very successful summit in bringing this issue to the required attention that it deserves. I think we Somalis need to thank the President of Kenya, President Uhuru, and the people of Kenya for hosting a really amazing summit that has finally changed the dialogue around this issue. Being a refugee is not a choice. You don't become a refugee by choice. You become a refugee because you are scared for your life, for your family, and it can happen to anybody. I remember as a freshly minted agricultural officer in Somalia in 1981. The first thing I did was help settle Ethiopian refugees in Somalia, in the Gedo region. 10 years later, in 1991, I myself crossed into Kenya as a refugee. So, it can happen to anybody.
Right.
So we have to honor. We have obligations under international law, and we have also obligations to each other as brothers and sisters that live in this region. So,
what do you think it's going to take for Somalia to be in a position to receive returnees?
Somalia needs to stabilize. There are 2 things we need to worry about when it comes to refugees and displaced people: security and livelihoods. These are the 2 dimensions of the issue. If the security improves in Somalia, with the current offensives and struggles against the Shabab succeeding, and then we put smart livelihood policies for these people so that they can take care of their families, find education for their children, then I think people will want to go back. Nobody wants to spend their entire life in a refugee camp. I mean, it may be difficult for professionals and for well-off people to understand this, but this is something. If you remember, in 1984, Sarajevo in the former Yugoslav Republic,
right,
was enjoying the height of civilization. I mean, they were hosting the Winter Olympics. 10 years later, we had the notorious Sarajevo siege. So disaster befalls people, and I think we need to worry about the dignity and the survival of people.
Right, Abdi, what he's talked about, Mohammed's talked about, stability, and now we have AMISOM troops expected to begin withdrawal next year. What are the critical areas to look at in terms of getting a critical mass, if you like, in terms of supportive infrastructure that can really constitute what you would call a stable Somalia?
Well, before I answer that question, I may also say from the same experience, I had the privilege of attending the closed-door meeting with the heads of states. Most of the heads of states were either refugees themselves before, or are hosting refugees, or their countries have refugees in other countries. So the experience at the head of state level was amazing. When I come to the critical mass needed, the idea is the immediate action that needs to be taken is to reinforce AMISOM. Parallel to that, and which has been in the proclamation from the meeting, is to establish the Somali army and police to stabilize those places. The way my friend Mohammed said, nobody wants to be a refugee by choice. It's the circumstances that are forcing people to come this way. So the immediate, whatever this meeting has created, is it brought all the international donors together. There is going to be a basket run by IGAD that is going to be formed. There is also the upcoming London meeting, which is also focusing on stabilizing Somalia. So Somalia now is on the right path, and the neighbors have played their part. And some of the neighbors are giving free education to Somali refugees like Ethiopia and Sudan. Ethiopia has gone even to the extent of saying they're going to give them land to do farming in certain areas.
Let me talk about AMISOM in particular, because this is a force that has had all sorts of problems in terms of commitment from member nations, the numbers of the force, the funding, etc. Past 2018, what kind of AMISOM unit should we be looking for Somalia, and with what kind of mandate?
Well, the mandate will remain the same. The only thing that will change is the financial support that was cut by the EU seems to be now. The EU seems to be ready to finance AMISOM for the short term. So what will change is maybe there will be more numbers, more funding, and more equipment.
All right. Mohammed,
and they will be proactive. For the last almost 1 year and something, they have been on the defensive. From now on, they will be on the offensive.
All right. Mohammed, there is, in stabilizing this part of Africa, the Horn, with the porous borders, with the issues of radicalization, and there is concern of re-emerging insurgencies within Somalia and the inability to conclusively deal with a shadowy enemy in the form of Al-Shabaab. What can the new elected leadership of Somalia do to combat this issue?
Let me first say a word about AMISOM, because you alluded to problems there. I have worked in a number of conflict areas in the region and in Central Africa. AMISOM has been exemplary in Somalia. I mean, if you talk about the footprint of AMISOM and their interaction with the people and incidents of issues with the local population, we can say without any reservation that the work of AMISOM in Somalia has been exemplary. In terms of radicalization, and especially as it relates to the issue of the refugees, I think the refugees have been victimized once again, because these people are people who have no borders, they have no boundaries. They exploit any situation and any opportunity that they may find to destabilize and create problems. I think the important thing in all of this is to focus on the youth. I think if we can find good, productive education and livelihoods for youth in the refugee camps while they are in Kenya or when they go back to Somalia, I think we will have solved a greater part of the potential for radicalization. Also, I think it is very important, and this summit set a very good environment. It is very important that states in the region, especially Somalia and Kenya, are working very closely on this issue, because you need to work together. You need intelligence sharing, you need cross-border monitoring, you need community policing. I think these issues are very important. So instead of victimizing the refugees, once again, I think we can address this issue in these forums.
All right. As a final question to you, and perhaps Abdi, I'll come to you. IGAD has been calling for the honoring of pledges that have been made to it. Could you give us in specifics what nature of pledges we're talking about?
Well, the pledges, we had the London summit, the first London summit, we had the Turkey summit, and the pledges are both in two ways, financial and political. So we got the political support from IGAD countries as well as the international community. The pledges we're talking about as the lessons we have learned from the first London conference as well as the Turkey one have not been honored fully. So based on those, IGAD heads of states will speak with one voice when it comes to the 11th May summit in London.
What has been pending?
What?
What is pending? What hasn't been honored?
Some of the pledges that the financial support that have not been.
Are there any particular states that are holding back?
Well, from my experience for the last 3 months, the meetings I've attending, the mood has changed. There has been total paradigm shift, and the new elections in Somalia have given the international community momentum and energy to support. So my hopes for the London meeting are very high.
All right, Mohammed, finally, your colleague has talked about a London meeting, and one sometimes wonders, a lot of talk shops have come around the issue of Somalia. You know, there's always a conference left, right, and center. At the end of the day, is more talk equal to more action?
I think, fortunately, in my opinion, we are entering a very good phase for addressing these issues in a sustainable way. I mean, we talked about the summit and how it has really changed the outlook and the dialogue around this issue. And of course, that has a built-in, it will build momentum and it will spill over into these other fora. Also, the election of the new government in Somalia, which has created a lot of goodwill and a lot of expectation, which is also a double-edged sword. But a lot of expectation will also set a very good environment locally, so that the donors and contributing states feel comfortable that their tax dollars that they contribute to these efforts will be utilized in a fair and transparent manner. So I'm quite optimistic. I have not been this optimistic about the refugee situation in the region, so basically Somali refugees, this long. So I'm quite optimistic.
All right, and I thank you both for taking time to speak to us this morning, and good luck to Somalia. Abdi Karim Mohammed, IGAD Somali Liaison Office, from the IGAD Somali Liaison Office, I should say, and Mohammed Abdi, who is a humanitarian expert with many years of experience in UN agencies and international agencies, including UNDP and FAO. We thank you for your views and for your time. Well, we're going to shift gears now and come back to